Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's draft day. We're telling you who the Wolves are taking, probably, in tonight's draft. Stay tuned.
This is Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Timberwolves talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Basketball Party on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in. Happy Wednesday. Wolves talk every Wednesday on Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's the Minnesota Basketball Party with a panel of experts who you'll meet in a moment. So excited to get into the draft today. It is a two-day event now. Wolves pick 27th tonight, 37th tomorrow. We're giving you our top targets. On the heels of the draft comes free agency. Wolves don't have a lot of money to throw around, but we'll give you some free agency targets as well for the Minnesota Timberwolves. We also circle back to the Chris Finch extension and talk about the Gopher in tonight's draft as well. Cam Christie trying to find a home in the NBA. Could that be with the Timberwolves as well? We get into all of that on today's Minnesota Basketball Party, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs have winded down. The sports are slowing down, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers, not just new customers, all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. All right, we've got plenty to get into, but before we do anything else, let's meet today's panel with our opening tip.
I'm Ron Johnson, former Gophers wide receiver, Gophers Hall of Famer, basketball fan, but basketball player. Basketball is my first love. And I want to talk to you guys today about why are we so worried about Bronny, but why do I think he should be a Timberwolf? We'll talk about that.
Oh, man. Here we go. Reggie Wilson, sports director at Care 11. And usually I'm not the biggest fan of drafts, but I'm pretty intrigued on what the Timberwolves do in this draft. And I got a few names that I think could work.
I'm Ben Beacon, host of the Daily Lockdown Wolves podcast. And like Reggie, I want to talk about a handful of names I've talked about on Lockdown Wolves over the last week that I think are good options for the Wolves, both at 27 and possibly 37. This draft's really intriguing because there isn't a clear, like, nobody knows what's going to happen. Not that we ever do, but like this draft, it could be all over the place. We could see guys falling. We could see guys that weren't mocked in the second round a couple weeks ago rising. It's going to be pretty interesting.
And we're missing the beloved Jack Borman today. He had a work conflict. We won't get Jack's opinions. That's unfortunate, but he'll be here in spirit. So the four of us press on the Minnesota Basketball Party. Before we talk draft, I want to spend just a couple moments on, first, the Chris Finch extension. That dropped a couple of days ago. I believe that was Monday. Chris Finch extended through 2028. I don't think that's unexpected. I think we expected Chris Finch to be the coach here for a long time. Now it's official. It's written in stone. He gets a lot of money. I'm curious what you guys like about Chris Finch's work the most, and if anything there is to knock. What does he need to work on now for the next 4 years as he's a member of the Timberwolves coaching staff? Ben Beacon, let's start with you. Kick it around the horn.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that's most impressive, obviously, besides the winning, I mean, there hasn't been a Wolves coach, of course, since Flip Saunders that's made the playoffs 3 straight years, and already the second most wins in franchise history. I think he's clearly a player's coach, but at the same time is really direct. And I don't know that we've always had both of those things in Minnesota, right? Like, to have a coach who the players like, because he's fairly hands off in some areas, and he will advocate for his players and lets them kind of be themselves. Isn't like a drill sergeant type coach, but at the same time he's direct and he treats everybody the same way. We hear everybody has said that about him, from Ant to Mike Conley. Basically every player that's played for the Wolves, it seems like, has really enjoyed Chris Finch, except for maybe D'Angelo Russell. But it seems like it's the right mix. It's the right balance. I think the area to improve is the offense. He was kind of billed as this offensive guru. Guru is maybe a strong word, but like all the different things he'd done with teams devoid of talent that he coached in Europe and the British Basketball League that ended up being good offensively, to his influence on the DeMarcus Cousins, Anthony Davis Pelicans offense, to the first year he spent in Denver with Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets coaching staff. He was supposed to be somebody that came in and was an offensive guru. And instead we've seen the defense go from bad to good to great. And the offense has gone from, has kind of gone back and forth in the middle of the pack. And it again was middle of the pack this year. So certainly there's a lot still there, a lot of meat on the bone in terms of this team offensively based on the pieces on this roster. And so, making the two big thing work this year is great, but the offense has to be better than 16th or 17th or wherever it finished this year if this team is ultimately going to win a title. And I think there's a good chance that happens because in part of Finch's background as an offensive mind. But clearly that's an area that Finch and the Wolves, more broadly can improve here in short order.
I just love his ability to manage egos. He inherits this team with Cat. Anthony Edwards comes along. Those two, could have maybe had a conflict, being couple stars in the making. They haven't had that. D'Angelo Russell was there along the way, and while it didn't work out with D'Angelo, at least Chris Finch found a way to get to the playoffs with him. Rudy Gobert, another star coming into the mix, and they've all seemingly gotten along fairly well, and they kind of understand their role within the framework of the team. Ron Johnson, what do you got?
Yeah, so first I want to go to the Chris Finch 70 point, like Cat was trying to go for 70 points or 81 points. Who knows what he was trying to do exactly. I like right away he talked about that. If I had Mike Conley, if I had this, he put the pressure back on the team. Like, we should not have lost that game. So right away you could see he set a tone for that team. He had an expectation for that team where a lot of coaches may not have went at their stars. We know that he's challenges stars, and that's key. When you think about Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant, like, you have to challenge your stars, and he always put the pressure back on Anthony Edwards. He always put the pressure back on Mike Conley to be a leader, and he talked about Cat needing to always be in the game and not fouling and not doing the things to get himself out, not whining to the refs. And I think that's what I like the most. The fact that as a head coach, he's not sitting back. Nothing against some of these coaches, but like Darvin Ham, Chris Finch would never let the guys like grab the clipboard or tell him I got this, or tell him to shut up. I got this. I'm doing this. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Chris Finch has respect to this team. He has like the authority to do what he needs to do. And the fact that he came back and coached after a broken kneecap or whatever it was, and still maintain that level, and to be able to get his assistants and Mike Nori, the best thing a coach can show is the fruit. Like everybody says, the sign of a good tree is the fruit that it bears. And you see Mike Nori step up and take over, and they don't really miss a beat, and that shows the fruit he's creating as well within the organization. So that's the things I look at, like the stuff on the floor, the defense, all that, like, it's going to show. But I look at the intangibles of why you would want a guy like that in your building, because he's going to create more men like him. He's going to bring more coaches along like him. And then he's going to have these players in line and ready to play. And that's what I saw. They both ends of the floor, for the most part, defensively and offensively, they listened to what Chris Finch said.
Reg, what do you got?
Ron, that's a really great point. I had a news director once who said that if I'm a good news director, that means when I am out of the building, when I'm away, this place still runs how it's supposed to run, and it still runs in excellence. If I'm not here, it is still, there's no chaos or anything like that. And that's the mark of a good leader. He has instilled his way in a place, and no matter if he's there, he's getting surgery, if he's out because of whatever. This was a very bizarre postseason because of the Conley running into the knee thing. But yeah, they didn't miss a beat. They went to the Western Conference Finals with a coach that probably should have been on IR. And so that was pretty impressive. That was pretty impressive. I think a couple things for me about Chris Finch that was really impressive. So he took over a team, what was that, like mid-season, which was very unorthodox. But then that next season, coached them to the playoffs. I think the team that he took over, very young team, and he was able to get the most out of those guys. I think the one thing that I feel the most impressed about Coach Finch is the maturity that he's helped the guys get to. Yeah, they've added some veteran pieces in there that have helped, like a Rudy Gobert, like a Mike Conley. Conley clearly is a leader in that locker room, but Finch did a good job of just instilling that culture and that spirit of accountability with his guys that I think really helped them kind of, continue to achieve success. And we've seen, gradual improvements, that year when they lost to the Grizzlies and, Charles Barkley just laid into Chris Finch about he didn't, call the timeout and all that stuff. I feel like we've seen a coach who has grown in the years that he's been a head coach with the Timberwolves as well, which, you would like to say, like, okay, if he continues to grow, then we could see a championship team. But, it's very hard to win a ring in the league. But I think that's something that I think is impressive about what he's done. Also, the fact that he's adapted to the roster that he's had and gotten the most out of these rosters. He's had some flux, multiple years of being there. They had Patrick Beverly and, all of that. And that was a interesting dynamic. And then, they trade for Rudy and they trade away D'Lo. And he's just continued to make the team work. I think, as Ben said, the defensive identity of the team has been top notch, especially this last season. What we want to see is, he's widely considered like this offensive genius and offensive guru. And I think, he has adapted, making the two bigs thing work. Maybe it's not the most ideal thing for what he's trying to run in today's NBA. And it's a little clunky at times, but I think what we want to see moving forward is just him kind of taking that next step, making this offense be a top 10, top 5 offense in the league and continuing to improve on the success of last season.
Yeah, great points, Reg. I would love to see a little better end of game offense at times, particularly on final plays. I feel like that's always been a struggle for the Wolves, but maybe I'm not watching enough of the league. I mean, maybe teams are failing in those situations all the time, and I'm expecting the Wolves to come through more often than they realistically would. There's one more thing I wanted to get to before we talk draft. The Mikal Bridges trade from the Nets to the Knicks. He goes crosstown for 5 first-round picks. Why is this important? First of all, that's like a Gobert-like compensation package. Secondly, I feel like it kind of wipes away 2 Karl-Anthony Towns landing spots if there was going to be a cat trade in one fell swoop, because the Knicks have shot their shot. They've given up 5 firsts. They're not going to add cat salary to that mix now. The Knicks are done, I think, making gigantic moves. And I might have circled the Nets at one point to say, hey, well, then Cat's a Brooklyn guy. Maybe they want to add someone next to Bridges. That's not going to happen now. I mean, they're clearly rebuilding. So there's 2 cat landing spots that are kind of wiped out in one move. I mean, Reggie, do you think that the conventional wisdom at this point, it seems to be all signs pointing to Cat sticking around in Minnesota?
Yeah, I think so. No more Brooklyn Bridges. It was very short lived. That was the best alliteration ever.
Yeah.
But Mikal's gonna go to New York and put some more offensive players in Mikal jail, as they say. He is one of the top defensive players in the league. It's so weird to see Mikal go to a Tibbs team, because I feel like Tibbs lives for these kind of players. Like, a dude that's going to maximize that on both ends of the floor. He is going to run him ragged. And you know what? God bless, thoughts and prayers.
He's never missed a game, and Tibbs will test that.
Well, yeah, Tibbs is definitely going to test that, because he's going to make him run 48 minutes a game. Both ends of the floor. I need your best. So I'm interested to see how that works. But yeah, I think, especially with the Knicks seemingly still going after OG as well, trying to retain him. And now unless it's like the Orlando Magic or something like that, I just don't know, what it looks like for Cat. I think all signs kind of point to Karl-Anthony Towns sticking around in Minnesota and not going anywhere.
We gotta go to Ron. Something's happening here. Something's going on.
No, I just feel like Sean Marks ran up on Leon Rose. Like, let me get those picks, man.
That's
check
crazy.
Check those picks here real quick. Like,
Mikal's
what are you doing? 5 first-round picks from Mikal Bridges. This is the thing. So I understand the friendship. I understand the pass. I understand chemistry. I understand they're trying to get the band back together, and they think that's the missing piece. But 5 first-round picks? Come on, man. Like, I don't know. I forgot what video or what meme that's from. Oh, Bootsy. Like when Boosie's doing that one interview with Vlad. Like, come on, man. Come on, man. Like 5 first-round picks. Like, I truly would have thought like a couple, like maybe 2, 3, 5. So, and I saw some other stuff. There's some language in there. Like it's a protected 2025 first-round pick via the Milwaukee Bucks and the Knicks. 2025, 2027, 2029, and 2031. They can protect another pick if they want. So there's some protection in there if the Knicks do well enough where they're like, hey, you can take our 31st pick or our 32nd pick. Or, I mean, I think they're going to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's the goal. It is there for the taking because they were pretty close until a couple injuries happened. But man, 5 first-round picks. So I mean, honestly, he's just leveraging his future for like the next 2 years. Because Reggie, you said that. How old is he?
He'll be 28 in August.
Yeah, like that. I mean, because KD, what was KD's? Was it his was 5, wasn't it? From the Nets as well.
It was pretty absurd. I guess so. I guess they the Nets are sitting on a gold mine now.
Yeah,
I mean,
because they got somebody showed the Nets what they got for KD, and so then they're showing this Mikal Bridges, so they're just loading up. So, and again, for the Nets, super smart. He ran up on them and like he was 50 Cent in one of his shows or something. Like, yo, let me get those. You don't need this. And if he can package those and they can jump up somehow and to get a lottery pick, then I see what the Nets are trying to do because nobody's going to use that many first round picks over the next 5 years or what to 2031. So my guess is trying to package it, maybe get a player for some of those picks. I mean, I don't know, but it felt like a little robbery to me. I was gonna say one thing too. Reggie made a great point about his newsroom staying together. I thought about teams that would break down, and I would feel like it'd be like Animal House if the coach wasn't there. And right away, I'm sorry, Reggie, but your Lakers came up. If Darvin Ham wasn't there, I felt like it would have been Animal House in that locker room. Like it would have been absolute chaos and mayhem. And the Detroit Pistons, like those 2 locker rooms, like Monty Williams just felt like he had checked out like after the 20th game. Like at one point when he was like, we're not winning, he was checked out. That I feel like if Monty Williams didn't show up again, it would be absolute like Nerf dart wars, water balloon fights, like nothing would get done. And that's what, back to Chris Finch being a great man. But yeah, no, the Nets definitely robbed the Knicks. They went right down the street. Yo, let me get that.
Yeah. Ben, I feel like Karl-Anthony Towns not netting 5 first-round picks in a trade. I feel like the Bridges. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. Do you think Cat would have fetched that much in a deal?
No, I don't think so. I think some of the we'll call it some of the warts or the shortcomings that everybody's fully aware of with Karl-Anthony Towns. I actually think that probably suppresses his trade value a little bit. I know that sounds silly because we're talking about literally people that acquire basketball players. It's their job. Like we're just talking about it. But like, I actually think Cat's impact on the floor is, I mean, in a vacuum right now, you could argue just as good as Mikal Bridges, but I don't think he would get that much in a trade. And I think this, like, there's also the Houston maneuvering piece of this where Houston's getting in there, getting some pick swaps. And of course, it was reported by Adrian Wojnarowski about, that they will want to make a run at Kevin Durant. But of course, Phoenix is saying they're not going to trade Durant. So, I mean, Houston could be a place to watch, not this offseason. But if they end up not getting Durant, in a year from now, say the Wolves take a step backwards this year and lose in the second round or something and don't want to pay the tax, don't want to be repeat taxpayers, Houston's a place to watch then, I think, and they always are, regardless of who's in that front office, even though it's not Daryl Morey anymore. But, Houston would be a place just because they've acquired those picks. And then also Brooklyn down the road, certainly not this offseason. And I agree with your initial point, Sam. I don't think Cat's going anywhere this offseason. We kind of said that a couple weeks ago, but it's becoming more and more clear that it's unlikely. But yeah, I don't think he gets that sort of a return. And it's funny because everyone that was so upset about the Rudy trade and all the number of picks, you look at the Mikal Bridges trade, and Mikal Bridges is a great player. Now, obviously, Rudy has shortcomings, but Rudy Gobert's impacted winning more in this league than Mikal Bridges has, and it's not close. Mm-hmm. And so I just think it's really funny that there's less of an outcry over this. I mean, Ron's right. Like, they did rob them, but like there's it's just less of a, people were like offended by the Rudy Gobert trade. And that, I don't think we've quite seen that with the Bridges trade in the, the 12 hours since or whatever.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say though is if I'm a Villanova player from that era with Jalen Brunson, Gillespie, Eric Paschal, Phil Booth, Dante DiVincenzo, and then they had Mikal Bridges on that team, I'm calling the Knicks like, yo, you might as well just take us all because clearly y'all like what we're doing over here in Nova. So if I'm one of these guys and I'm in the G League or I'm overseas, hey, yo, y'all got to get me in for camp, man. Because clearly, I'm pretty sure one of these guys will get a 12 spot. Like if these guys are playing overseas now, they would get a 12 spot on that roster. You might as well just bring them all in.
Hey, Coach Thibodeau, I've been selling real estate the last 4 years, but I was on that team. Could I get a contract? I'm good for the vibes.
The 12th man. Hey, if Tristan Thompson, after his 12th baby, like, hey, just saying, Tristan Thompson used his friendships to get on teams. Might as well do it.
Yeah, it's all about. I mean, Tom Thibodeau was hoarding former Bulls when he was the Wolves coach, and now he's hoarding former Villanova Wildcats.
They might as well just hire Jay Wright. Like, just go ahead and bring Jay Wright in.
Why not? Why not?
Goodness.
He's got much better hair than Tom Thibodeau does. Coming up on the Minnesota Basketball Party, we will give you draft targets for the Timberwolves, and I'm talking only exclusively about left-handed players. That's coming up on Locked On Sports Minnesota. eBay Motors brings us today's show. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's dive in. NBA draft. Wolves at 27 tonight, 37 tomorrow. I want targets. I want names. I want to see who gets it right tonight. Who's going to nail the Timberwolves pick? And we start with Ron Johnson. Give me a name.
Dang it. I got a couple names, but I'll just throw one out there. Because he's not going to be there when I get it, so I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go Cam Christie. I'm going to go with the Gophers' hometown favorite. I remember they went and got what's his name? For Apple Valley High School. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? Tyus Jones. I remember they got Tyus Jones before. So they're fans sometimes of the guy that can make. But Christie is an absolute rifle. Like, he shoots the ball well. His brother's in the league, so he does have the lineage and he has the mindset of an NBA player. That's one of the reasons why when he entered the draft, people are like, dude, you're not like a lottery pick. Why are you leaving the Gophers? But I think a lot of the scouts kind of know his family, know what his brother's done. And so this is a guy that's an absolute shooter, 6'5", 200 pounds. He's position ranked 18th as a shooting guard, overall 32nd. He also, and I talked to Ben Johnson about this, he also can handle the ball. So he can bring the ball up the floor if you need him to in a situation where you have two shooting guards on the floor. He's a guy that can bring it up and protect the ball because he is a quicker guard. But again, he gets his shot off quick. That's one of the things he worked on with the Gophers. So I like Cam Christie to the Gophers. I got some other names, but I'll hold off on those.
Yeah, only 18 years old, too, Cam Christie. I mean, the shooting's there. If he gets some strength to help him defend, help him score inside, yeah, that could be a real.
I would say Tiki Town has never seen that guy in the weight room more than once. So he definitely can use some NBA workouts with Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I've seen him projected around that kind of 40 mark. But again, Ben said this earlier. It seems like from 20 to 50, it's very hard to separate who's going to go where. Reggie Wilson, give me a target.
So is this just first round or all around?
I mean, these two picks are so close together. I feel like that whoever you say could go 27 or 37. So just give me anyone.
All right, so I think I talked about this on Friday on the roundtable, but I feel like if he's there, the Wolves should draft Terrence Shannon Jr.
He's on my list too.
Yeah, I think that's the dude for me. 6'6", he can play make. He's a little bit older at 23 years old because he's played 4 years in college, and so he's
5
very
years.
skilled. Yeah, that's right.
Illinois.
Yeah, that's right. And so
him and Dane Danger.
Yeah, and so now with him kind of having that maturity under his belt, he's gotten better each and every year. Obviously, topping out this past season at Illinois under all the scrutiny that he got. I was at the Big Ten championship game, and man, those fans were letting him have it. With all the allegations that he was facing, and that was pretty much him every game on the road. Fans were kind of letting him have it. We know he got found not guilty. We saw the tweet from LeBron James just kind of saying, people need to apologize and all this stuff. And I still think that kind of knocks him a little bit, but he had an incredible postseason performance, averaging like close to 20 points a game in all the postseason games until Illinois got knocked out. And so I think that's a target for me. I saw, Baylor Shearman from Creighton being mocked to the Wolves as well. I don't know a whole lot about him. Didn't watch a lot of Creighton this year. But yeah, Terrence Shannon would be my pick in the first round.
I'll give you more about the Baylor kid in a second. He's on my list. The Shannon one's interesting just because of how a lot of these guys kind of switched schools. They took advantage of the transfer rules and reinvented themselves. After 3 years of Shannon's career, is he getting drafted after the Texas Tech stage? I don't know. I don't think so. And then he goes to Illinois and he uses that 5th year and he totally reinvents himself and turns himself into a legit prospect. 23 points per game last year. Ben, what do you got? Who you got?
Yeah, so I was going to go Baylor Sherman, but it sounds like you want to talk about him.
Go for it. I'll talk about someone else. You got it.
Okay. So I have both Cam Christie and Terrence Shannon on my list. So what I did at Lockdown Wolves is I did actually today's show. So if you haven't listened to it, please do. I talked about 12 guys who most of I talked about over the last week, and all guys who could be targets at 27 or 37 if they move around within there, if they move back, if they move up a little from 37 or whatever. So basically what we're doing right now, and both those guys are on that list for me. I had Cam Christie at number 4. I had Terrence Shannon at number 8. My number 1 guy is Baylor Shireman out of Creighton. I think also what the Wolves do with this pick will kind of tip our hand as to whether or not they think they can get Slow-Mo back. And we talked about this on this show a couple weeks ago. It should be a priority to try and get him back. And it'd be great if they did. I'm a bit dubious that it happens. Just I think they're not gonna have the full mid-level. Like they need a backup point guard. I don't know. So if they take somebody like a Shireman, I think he's a reasonable Kyle Anderson replacement. He's not going to be as good of a defender as Slow-Mo from day one, and I don't think he'll distribute the ball as well offensively as a facilitator, but I think he can get there. He's obviously the way I described him on the show was I would say he's like Slow-Mo with more juice off the dribble, which isn't hard to do, and also a jumper. He's a great shooter, and that's obviously the big separator here. Is he was 78th percentile catch and shoot from outside the arc this year in college. In pick and roll, he didn't actually handle a ton in pick and roll, but he was 96th percentile in pick and roll when he did handle the ball. So he could do a little bit of everything. He'll be a little limited defensively, but he's generally a good team defender. And I see him as, maybe not year 1, but in year 2 or year 3, a Slow-Mo type role where he could actually be an initiator off the bench for you offensively, but immediately he could be a catch and shoot guy and a secondary creator, which is, when we say that the Wolves need this offseason, they need a playmaker. And I think Baylor Shireman can be that. I don't know that you're going to rely on him like you did Slow-Mo last year from day one, but you've still got Nickeil Alexander-Walker to do a little bit of that. You've still got potentially Amonte Morris or somebody else you're going to bring back as your backup point guard. So I think Shireman can be your catch and shoot guy with some secondary playmaking immediately, and then longer term develops into more of a Slow-Mo type player. He's also really good rebounder for his size. He's 6'6", 6'8" wingspan. So he's really more of a 2-guard size, but he rebounds more like a forward. And so kind of all of those things, the only real drawback is he's a little bit of an older player, but that might be a good thing for the Wolves because he could be pretty plug and play off the bench. And then he's a little bit limited athletically, and I don't think he'll be a great one-on-one defender, but I think he'll be adequate. So I like him if he's there, and he's typically mocked right around the Wolves range. I think maybe the most recent ESPN one actually had him going to the Wolves. I think Reggie said that. So I like him as a potential fit for Minnesota.
I think Minnesota fans would really glom on to this particular player because of his upper Midwest connections. He's from Nebraska. He played at SDSU. He played at Creighton. He'd be a very likable player. Also, he's a lefty. I love my lefties. And the shooting that you mentioned, Ben, it's not toe on the line threes. It's range. He's got range. NBA range, 39% in his career on almost 1,000 3-point shots. almost 24 years old, probably comes in with a little maturity. And Chris Finch has said in a radio interview that they are looking at and are intrigued by those 5th or 6th year guys that have a lot of college experience and probably a good head on their shoulders. Let me highlight another lefty because I'm obsessed with the southpaws. I think this guy might have to drop a little bit. Tyler Kolek. A lot of people thinking he goes in the early 20s. He's a little undersized, 6'1", 200 pounds, 23 years old, 3 years at Marquette. He is a former Big East Player of the Year, Conference Tourney MVP, NCAA All-Region, averaged 14 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds the last 2 years at Marquette. He's an exquisite passer. He is a good shooter, super intense, super good defender. He's a leader. He's one of those just high, high character guys that's going to add something, I think, as a glue guy. Tyler Kolek, 23, out of Marquette. Love him, not as much as Shireman, but I think he might actually go ahead of Shireman in the draft. So Kolek, I'm watching for him in the 20s.
Can I jump in real quick on Kolek?
Yes, absolutely.
So I do think he goes before the Wolves. I had him on my list, but I had him lower than a couple other point guards, lower than guys who probably won't go before him. So I guess what I'm saying is I like Kolek, but I think I wouldn't take him at 27 if he was there, if I was the Wolves, ahead of a couple other guys. Mm-hmm. And really guys that are frequently mocked in the second round. I really like Jamal Shed, who's going to go in the second round. He's not going to be a first round pick. But I actually think he's a lot like Kolek, but I think he's a better defender, and he's not as good of a shooter. Kolek is a good shooter, but Shed can knock down an open shot. I think he's every bit as good of a passer, and he's tough. He's strong for his size. He's got a really low center of gravity and knows how to use it. He'd be an option at 37 if the Wolves decide to. And again, we don't know. Like if they take Shireman at 27, he's the Kyle Anderson, air quotes Kyle Anderson pick. They take Shed at 37, then they may be looking at him as like, hey, he's our primary backup point guard, and maybe we sign McLaughlin on a minimum and they can battle it out for minutes. So Kolek's fine, but I do think he goes before Minnesota. I worry a little bit about, because he's so small, I think he either needs to be a better shooter or turn into a really good defender, and I'm not sure he's got the chops defensively to be a small point guard and be successful. His ceiling's probably higher, because if he becomes a knockdown shooter and is passable defensively, then yeah, there's a world in which he's a starter. But Shed, I think, has a higher floor and a lower ceiling. I don't know that he's ever more than a backup point guard, but he could be one of the best backup point guards in the league. Yes. And other point guard type names, that are in there, like Juan Nunez is a second round possibility for the Wolves. He's playing in Germany from Spain, big point guard, not a great shooter. KJ Simpson from Colorado. And there's one other guy that I had in here somewhere, but KJ Simpson from Colorado is another one that occasionally is mocked to Minnesota. I think he's probably a second round pick too. I would take any of those guys at or before Kolek in the draft. Frankly, I think Kolek's a little bit overrated as a prospect.
All right. I love the take, and I love and Ron, I think you had a good reaction there on Shed. I love Shed. I love the way he breaks dudes down in the mid range. I know he's like 6 inches shorter than Shea, but it reminds me of Shea, the way he can get that floater up. I would take Shed 7 days a week. Ron, what do you got on that?
And that's where I was going to go with that. Like if you look at Shed in the NCAA tournament and the conference tournament leading up to it, he was an absolute baller. And that's what basketball is about. Sometimes there are guys that just put stuff on film that they end up in the second round, but they last longer in the NBA because they're actual ballers. I think Kolek, I agree. I think Kolek is just, he had some spurts and now he's getting the like, oh, he went to the combine and he looked really good there. Oh, I like the way he moves with the ball. But then what did he do in games? Like, Shed was an absolute baller. And yes, he's not a 3-point shooter, but you don't need that when you surround him with guys like Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, like guys that can knock, and Cat, they can knock down the shot. This is a guy that's extremely unselfish. This is a guy that wants to win. I think he was like 120 and like 8 or something, or 18 his entire career. Like this guy is a winner, and that's what you want sometimes. Like Tyus Jones, I mean, even though it was a 1 year at Duke, but he won in high school. He won in college. He won, with AAU when he played for Howard Pulley. Like this kid, Tyus Jones, had been a winner his entire life, and he gets to the NBA, and that's why he continues to be one of the most consummate, whether backups or starters or, guys on the floor. And I think that's what Jared Shed is, or Jamal Shed. I think he is better than Kolek. And that's why I'm glad he's back there, because if the Timberwolves do pick at 37 and they want to take him there, that's the guy to take. And I go back to the 2012 draft, and you look at some of the names that went before Draymond Green. Draymond Green went 35th, so close to that 37th. You look at some of the names before Draymond, I guarantee some of these teams would say, ooh, crap, we could have had him. They would make that change. Like Jared Sullinger. I don't know if I would say he was a better pro than Draymond. Royce White. Nothing against Royce White. We know what happened with him. But I'm pretty sure the Houston Rockets were like, man, we could have had Draymond, and this guy's a glue guy. Like, that's what you look at, the names that became, here's a guy I could take versus, well, you know what? Draymond Green is a true pro. We're going to put him around guys that work. And that's where I think Jamal Shed is. You put him around guys that he can make it work as a true backup.
I just think the Wolves with 27 and 37 need to get two guys that might have a chance to contribute right away. Shed feels like that. He's so tough on defense. It would fit perfectly into that culture that the Wolves have. And you hope that one of those two guys hits. One of those two guys can be a role player for you this year and next year when you're in that championship window. That's why I love a guy like Shed, love a guy like Shireman. I might like Kolek more than you guys, but you've kind of debunked me on that, so maybe I'll shut up. Any last wild cards or prospects you'd like to nominate? Reggie, anybody else for you or anybody around the circle?
No, I was going to share. My father-in-law is a Houston grad, and so we watched a lot of Houston basketball. And Shed is just a gamer, dude. Like, in that we were watching that OT game that they had in the NCAA tournament. Who was that against? Texas A&M. That game was wild. And Shed scored 21 points in that. He's not really known as a shooter that much, but he scored 21, but he also had 10 assists. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is a guy who can go out there and distribute the rock. There are other guys who can make shots and you rely on them for their shot making ability, but a dude who can really just kind of like distribute it around and get the ball in the playmaker's hands, that's really what you like. And I think that would be a great pickup for the Wolves as they kind of send Conley into the sunset these last couple years and kind of, move forward. I think Shed could be a guy that they could really kind of rely on moving forward.
Yeah.
Real quick, last couple things on my board. So in the we did a Locked On NBA. The team host did a mock draft where we just kind of went through and picked everybody. And Shireman actually went one pick before the Wolves to Memphis. So I took Johnny Furphy out of Kansas. I like him. He's more of a 3-and-D type guy, more athletic than Shireman. Good defense, better defensively probably from day one. Really good rebound size. Yes, yeah, Australian. I like him. I like Furphy a lot. I also had Keyshawn George out of Miami. He was next on my board. So Furphy was 2 and Keyshawn George was 3. And then the one name to watch who I don't think will go in the first round, but he's like, if you go back to mocks from a week ago, he was like not even in the second round in a lot of mock drafts, but he may get some first round love, is Enrique Freeman out of Akron. He's a 5-year player at Akron and he led the country in rebounding. So a lot, you assume it's Edie from Purdue, but it was actually Freeman. He led the country both per game and rate rebounding, like total rebound rate. Athletic, he did a lot of damage in the MAC as just a bigger player than some other guys, but he's actually not that big. He's only like 6'8", 6'7". He's going to be a good defender, massive wingspan, like 7'2". He's kind of like and also he didn't shoot any threes like his first 3 years in college, but apparently in workouts, he's just like shooting the ball extremely well. So he could be an option in the second round. I see him as like maybe a Josh Minott with a jumper type player, not quite as big as Minott. So is that like a depth play with some upside as an older player again to look out for Minnesota? He's kind of a do stuff guy, rebound, steals, blocks. So Freeman would be more of a second round guy, but first round, Shireman, Furphy, Keyshawn George, those are names that I like at 27.
Nice.
I was going to say one thing. Only thing I don't like about Furphy is when you watched Kansas play, there were times where, and it felt like, say it again?
I said he disappeared.
Oh yeah, like I was gonna say, I thought I disappeared. I'm like, what? Did I go somewhere? Defensively, he it wasn't Luka because he was trying. It just felt like maybe he wasn't strong enough, or maybe conditioning. And that's the thing. He's only 19, so he is gonna have time to lift weights, and that's what people forget. I remember my freshman year in college, we lifted, but we didn't take it serious. Like we didn't start taking lifting serious till we were like in our 20s, because then you get another set of hormones that people don't realize for men. When you get into that 20, 21, 22, you get another set of hormones that kind of that grown man strength, and you start getting stronger, you start lifting heavier. And that's what some of these guys are going to do. Same with Kyle Filipowski. Like I liked him at 6'11". He is a stretch guy that can guard your power forwards and your centers and sometimes your small forwards, because he is a shooter and he gets matched up with smaller guys at times. But the one thing about Furphy is strength. Like he's going to have to get stronger. Now, shooter, wingman, he's a killer. But like the defensive side of Chris Finch, and that's what I worry about, is like, where does he fit in that defensive side? Because I hate to say, I know Sam loves slow-mo. Like that's what I started to notice about slow-mo. He's a guy willing to body up guys. But again, this kid's 19. So I think, that is one of those age picks where it's like his age fits the growth process of where your team is. And he fits there as well. I saw his name. I saw Filipowski, and also saw Bronny. Like if I'm at 37 and Bronny's sitting there, like I don't know. I don't know. I would have to seriously think about that as a backup shooting guard as well. That's just me. Got my Bronny plug in there.
Over under on Bronny's draft position, at least yesterday, was 47.5. I would bet money he goes 55 to the Lakers to be with Dad. I'd honestly be stunned if that wasn't the result.
Probably.
But we'll find out. We'll find out about Bronny's fate tonight and the Timberwolves. 27th. But actually, we won't find out Bronny tonight. That'll be tomorrow, because they separated the rounds into 2 days. When we return, we have enough time for a quick free agency preview, which is right on the heels of the draft. Targets for the Wolves. That's next. We are presented this morning by FanDuel. We all love sports. We want to just get as many sports as we can. We love sports. Get to October where all the sports are playing. Right now, there's fewer sports, but there's still some sports. WNBA, Lynx covered the +5.5 last night in the Commissioner's Cup, and they beat the Liberty. They are on a roll. Major League Baseball, Twins lost a tough one. There's still plenty of options at FanDuel, and they are now hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, something for everyone, every day, all summer long at FanDuel. Head there now, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and start making the most out of your summer. Check out the NBA draft props for tonight. You can bet on Bronny. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, we have enough time for a minute each to give our free agency takes on the Wolves. Free agency opens up on Sunday, where teams can begin negotiating, sort of the tampering period, if you will, for the NBA. Wolves don't have a lot of money to throw around. Reggie Wilson, give me a free agency target.
So I'll give you two guys.
Okay.
One being that they really don't have a whole lot of money to spend, but just try to take a flyer on guys. How about Gordon Hayward? I know his wife was mad because he didn't get utilized in the playoffs, but like he still feels like he has something to give, and he could be a guy that you bring off the bench that could, shoot it for you. I don't know that, he's going to give you a whole lot on the defensive end, but he could be a guy that could help come off the bench and give you some shooting ability in that second unit. And also very intriguing guy here, only 26 years old still. How about Lonzo Ball? That would be interesting. That would be interesting to me, just because like he is a point guard that you don't have to necessarily give a whole lot of minutes to. But when we talk about the ability to distribute and pass and all that, like he has all of that for sure. Yeah, he's been out of the league for a couple years because of the knee injuries, and that is the scary part about it. But that may be why you can get him on something of like a cheap deal.
Very interesting. Ron,
see, my picks don't make any sense because like they don't have the money. But honestly, I would love to see, like, I don't know if it would work, but Klay Thompson. Like, if you added an absolute shooter to this team, like, I know it's not going to work, but who knows? Like, Klay might be mad enough where he wants to come over. I also saw Tyus Jones as an unrestricted free agent as well. But again, he made $29 million over the last 2 years. So does he fit in what they can afford? I do like the Gordon Hayward, and I was going to say that one as well because I saw his post about what did he say, Reggie? Like, I'm healthy and I'm ready or something, or I'm like, it was something like that. Like he felt unutilized. And so, yeah, I could see Gordon Hayward because he is a guy that when he was on, he gives you true minutes, he gives you true scoring, and he gives you true smart plays. Like, he doesn't make a lot of dumb plays. He can guard a lot of the wings in this 3-point happy league, if you want to call it that, where guys are spread out. He's a guy that can stretch out there and get to him, but he's also a guy not afraid to put his back to the basket. So he kind of fits in that role of like, well, what would my role be with the Timberwolves? Because he didn't have one this year. And so, yeah, I like the Gordon Hayward one as well, because I felt like he's a guy that'd be willing to take anything right now to be a true role player, because he wasn't used. And so a lot of guys chase like the team sometimes, and they're not chasing the role. Like, at this point in your career. And the Lonzo Ball, like if this was 4 years ago, give me Lonzo Ball. I worry about his knee, because he's so worried about like getting outfits on Instagram than he is getting in rehab in. So like, him and his girl change clothes every day now. It's like, dude, like go get ice and stem. So I would like Lonzo, but I would have to get that physical would have to be pristine.
It'd be like when they had Derrick Rose. It's like, all right, you look really good now, but how's your knee going to feel tomorrow? Kind of one of those situations. Ben.
Yeah, I mean, my ideal realistic, like, next week, I guess, for the Timberwolves would be drafting Baylor Shireman at 27. And, unfortunately, I don't think Kyle Anderson comes back. I think I don't know what they do with 37. Maybe they, draft and stash or kick it down the road or whatever. And then you bring back Monte Morris with your mid-level to play backup point. And I'd be good with Gordon Hayward, because then you're really all you have is minimum deals. So Gordon Hayward is probably on that list. I like Reggie Bullock as an option. I think he was underutilized last year. Jay Crowder, I don't know that he's got much left in the tank, but he'd be, I think, an option on a minimum deal. Justin Holiday might need more. He might be more of a mid-level type guy if they don't get Monte Morris. But ironically, of course, he played for Denver this last year. And then Alec Burks is another one. Those guys are all kind of at that point in their career where they're starting to break down physically, but they can still play hard defensively. They can all knock down shots from the perimeter, which are kind of, what you're looking for in this role. If you draft a Baylor Shireman or bring back Slow-Mo, otherwise you need to look for guys who can do a little bit more with the ball in their hands, like a Gordon Hayward, who can distribute a little bit. I mean, he was averaging 15 a game last year for Charlotte before he got traded to OKC, so he could still score a little bit. Taurean Prince, old friend Taurean Prince, maybe minimum deal, could kind of fit that same role with Minnesota. So I think you're looking for that bigger, tougher wing guard type role that can make a little bit, play some defense, knock down open threes, kind of a well-rounded plug-and-play veteran. And Crowder, Bullock, Holiday, Burks, Hayward, if you want somebody who scores a little bit more, those guys would all be on that list for me.
Hey, Sam, I was going to say one thing real quick. Could potentially free agents, though, we could do undrafted guys as well, right?
Like out of the draft, if they don't.
Correct. Because one name comes up is Trey Mitchell. He's a Wildcat out of Kentucky. You think about, he's 6'9", he can guard the wing. He was in that Kentucky offense that was spread out. And, he would have that relationship with Cat, being that, Cat would go back to Kentucky. That's another name that, as a 6'9" guy to replace Slow-Mo, he could be that fit.
Yeah, could develop a little bit, maybe spend some time in Iowa, just hang out. I think for me, closing minute, Jordan Nwora was wasting away with Toronto. He's only 25. He can shoot threes. Reggie tells me that Spencer Dinwiddie did okay in a bench role for the Lakers. He's kind of some instant scoring, not a great defender, but that's maybe an option at a small deal. And then purely on vibes, I don't know how he fits. Can Kevin Love retire a Timberwolves? Bring back K-Love. He said he still wants to play. Gonna turn down that player option maybe and come back to Minnesota. I would be there for the vibes. That's the show today. Enjoy the draft tonight. Listen to Ben Beacon's list on Locked On Wolves. Watch Reggie Wilson on Care 11 and go back and watch the Ron Johnson Show for more draft takes yesterday on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week to break it all down.